Welcome to our first online gardening class with Indian Lake librarian Susan Rawlings. It will be aired on the ALCA-Seltzer series for the Art Center and posted on the library's website. So today we are going to have a class in straw bale gardening. So please begin, Susan. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hi everybody, my name is Susan and I work at the library and I'm a very passionate straw bale gardener. And straw bale gardening is basically taking something like a straw bale and turning it into a growing medium so that you can support plant life. And the way that you do that is that you are going to condition your straw bale for a couple of weeks with fertilizer, and that fertilizer is going to start to decompose your straw bale and turn it into all kinds of yummy nutrients for your plants to eat. Now, why do this? Isn't it easier just to throw plants into the ground and let them grow? It is, but as I found out when I moved up to the Adirondacks, I had terrible soil. It's nice and sandy and it drains really well, but there's no nutrition in there. And it gets very, very expensive to get topsoil, so I had to find a solution. Another great thing about straw bale gardening is that you've basically brought the ground up to you. You don't need to bend over quite so much. So if you're someone who doesn't like to spend a lot of time on your hands and knees weeding, straw bale gardening is a really good solution. Something else that's nice about straw bales is that you are going to avoid soil-borne diseases because you're not working in the soil. And all the creepy little insects that overwinter in the soil and then come up and mess with your garden, they're not in your straw bales either. So that's another good reason to do it. And straw bale gardening is very adaptable to a small garden or a very large garden. And you don't have to plant just on the top of the straw bale. You can actually have little planting pockets all around the bale. So for not a lot of square footage, you can actually plant quite a lot of stuff. So those are some of the highlights of why I think it's a really good way to garden. Okay, so there's 6 basic steps to preparing and enjoying your straw bale garden. The first thing you need to do is figure out where you want your straw bale garden to be. Almost any surface will work, with a couple of exceptions. You don't want to have your straw bales on your beautiful newly painted deck. The reason is because these bales, once you start conditioning them, the bottoms will stay wet for a very, very long time. And if you have that wet surface on something that's not supposed to be wet, it's not a very good combination. But you could do it in your driveway on asphalt, you could do it on wood chips, you could do it on sand, grass, whatever floats your boat. It's very adaptable. Important thing is, when you do place your straw bales, you want to make sure that you have the cut side facing up. Okay, so it's called a straw bale because they're little straws that are left over from whatever cereal grain was harvested. So when you look down at your straw bale, you want to see those little ends of straws. Okay, so this is the cut side, and this is the surface that you're going to use to plant your stuff. You can plant them in rows. You can plant them on a slight slope, but if you do plant your straw bales on a slope, you want to have them going down the slope the long way, like this, so that if you have a wind that comes up or something, it's not going to tip the bale that way. If you have the bale facing down the slope like this, it's very much more easy for the wind to knock your garden over, and that would be very sad.
Yeah.
So placement's the first step. The next step is fertilizing your straw bales. So you're going to try to find a very high nitrogen fertilizer to start the decomp process. And then after that, you're going to what I call primp your straw bales. And by primping, I mean if you choose to, you could do a trellis system around your straw bales so that you can have climbing vines and things coming up. Or if you wanted to install some kind of watering system, like a soaker hose system, you can do that as you're doing the conditioning process, because you've got about 2 weeks to wait before you can stick your plants in there. So step 4 after the primping would be actually planting your seeds and veggies, which is really a lot of fun. And then step 5 is harvest all your hard work, and step 6 would be dealing with this straw bale after you're done using it as a planting medium. And I deal with mine typically by composting them in different parts of my garden. So pretty easy 6 steps. We talked about placing them already. So the next thing I want to talk about is fertilizer. So you need to decide what fertilizer you need for your straw bales. What you want to look for is something with high nitrogen in it. And every bag of fertilizer will have 3 numbers that represent the 3 macronutrients that plants need. The first number stands for nitrogen, the second number stands for phosphorus, and the last number stands for potassium. You will see a lot of times on the bags, these conveniently don't have them on there, but you'll see N, P, K. N for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, and K for potassium. The reason the K stands for the potassium is because a long time ago potassium was called kalium, and kalium started with a K, and that stood for Kali, which was Arabic, and then that stood for alkali. So potash is sort of an alkali that goes into the fertilizer. That's a dumb bit of trivia, but there you go.
Wow, I feel like we might have to study up on our chemistry a little.
Right? And don't worry, there are handouts on the Indian Lake Library website. So I know I'm talking really fast and there's a lot of information, but you can download those handouts and have all the information in front of you. So this bag is primarily nitrogen. So the NPK is 46% nitrogen, no phosphorus, and no potassium. So this is really ideal for me to use to start conditioning my bales. Something that's a little bit more readily available, I bought this I think at Agway in Lake George. Something that might be more readily available is lawn fertilizer, which typically will be about 29 or 30% nitrogen, and then maybe 3% phosphorus, and maybe 4% potassium, or potassium. And if you have a couple little numbers in there, that's fine. The thing with lawn fertilizer that you must look out for is you don't want to get a bag of fertilizer that says crabgrass control or weed killer in it, because if you put stuff with weed killers in your growing medium, you're going to kill whatever you want to grow. So please make sure it does not have weed killer in it. And then another thing to maybe look out for is something that's an extremely slow release nitrogen, because that will take a lot longer for your bales to decompose. And typically when you see slow release nitrogen, it'll be white, but then there'll be some like weird little red and blue bits, and those are coated pieces of nitrogen that will slowly melt off and hence slowly release the nitrogen. If you have like maybe 2 or 3 or 4% of that in your lawn fertilizer, that's probably okay. If you have like 10%, you're probably kind of getting on the edge of not wanting to use that fertilizer because it'll take a while. But like I said, if you can find something like this at a feed store or an Agway, the 46 will get you going. And there's a schedule to how you condition your bales, and it's a very easy schedule. Again, it's on the handouts, but I made myself like fertilizer for dummies kind of fertilizer application. I have this yogurt container, and it's filled with the nitrogen, which is just like...
So that's what's in the bag?
That's what's in this bag. It's just like these little white pellets. And I punched a bunch of holes in the top, so it's sort of like a little shaker. And then what I did, took a little while, is I marked little black marks every half cup, and then I put little red marks every quarter cup, and then there's the half cup, and then another quarter cup and a half cup. And this will help me measure out what I need for all my bales, and I don't have to think too hard, which is really nice. So the first day that you do your bales, and I conveniently wrote my schedule on the other side of the jar. The first day, you're going to start with a half a cup of high nitrogen fertilizer on every single bale. So I simply will go to my bale, and prior to sprinkling on here, it's a good idea if you want to maybe stab your bales a little bit. It kind of helps get out a little bit of aggression. And
little exercise.
And it makes like little holes that you can have the fertilizer go into. Because you're not just going to sprinkle, you're also going to water in that fertilizer so it has a chance to travel down into the bale. So I have this like weird little tool, I don't even know what it is, but it's a good stabby tool. If you have like a broken ski pole, that also works really well. So see what you've got around. And after you do some stabbing, it's simply a matter of using just like a little shaker. You get a little rhythm going, get some music in your head.
Should you be wearing gloves? I noticed that you're not wearing gloves. Does it matter? Is it okay to touch that?
I'm not really touching it, but ideally, yeah, if you're going to be playing around in the bags of stuff, you might want to wear them because it will dry you out.
Good to know.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, especially when we're washing our hands constantly all the time.
Right. So I'm looking here, and I've got like another 1/4 of a cup to go. And is this an exact science? No, it's not an exact science. So don't worry if you put a little too much on there, it won't hurt anything. So I basically shake until I get down for 1/2 cup. And then, if you have a hose works great. It's too early for my hose to be out right now, since it's going to be 20 degrees tomorrow. But you can just use a little watering can or a hose, and you're soaking that stuff in. And you want to pretty much get these bales saturated. The magical things about straw bales is that they can take tons and tons of water and never seem to be overwatered, but they also manage to stay pretty well saturated. They just don't totally ever dry out. So it's kind of a nice happy medium. Nothing ever is too much or too little. And I can even see, because this is almost, pretty pure nitrogen, that it actually just melts. Right,
kind of like sinking in there.
Yeah, it does. And as your days progress with this, you'll be able to stab deeper and deeper into there, because it is kind of falling apart in a way. Now, so you do that for the first day, and then my schedule here for the second day, all you're going to do is water your bale. And then on the third day, I'm going to do another 1/2 cup.
Okay.
The fourth day, I'm just going to water. And then the fifth day, another 1/2 cup. The sixth day, just water. And when you get to day number 7, you don't need quite so much of this stuff. Hence the 1/4 cup measurements. You just need a 1/4 cup per bale. And again, this is on the handout, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. So you do a 1/4 cup day 7, water it. Do a 1/4 cup day 8, water it. Do a 1/4 cup day 9, and water it. And then on day 10, no more nitrogen, you're all done with this stuff. What you need to do is add the phosphorus and potassium component. So you're going to switch to a very balanced fertilizer, like your 10, 10, 10 over here. So again, it's the 3 numbers, the NPK numbers, 10% nitrogen, 10% phosphorus, 10% potassium, and it's on day 10, so it makes it easy to remember.
Yay.
You're going to do a full cup of that stuff right over the top and water it in. And then on day 11, you don't do anything, just wait. You don't have to water it, you don't have to do anything. And if all goes as planned, day 12, you're ready to plant. Sprinkle a little too much, it's not a big deal. It's a pretty forgiving process, so if you have to go out of town or do something, not that anybody's going anywhere,
Not these days.
it's fine. So yeah, we will be getting the bales towards the end of April, and I'm pretty sure too, if you don't get them through us at the library, you can still go down to the Lake Pleasant
Plant sale
location and get them.
How much are the bales?
Oh, the bales this year are $7.50 a piece.
Great.
So, it's not free, but it's cheaper than topsoil.
Yeah.
So that cover?
Yeah, that sounds good. What's next?
Next, let's see. Oh, well, okay. We could do the primping. So we had the placing, and now we did the fertilizing. So primping would be next.
So you're going to show us how to create a trellis system?
Yeah, I'm going to show you about how to do a trellis, and then we'll talk briefly about if you wanted to design a soaker hose system if you have a lot of bales and you don't want to stand there with a hose all day. So we can go up to my garden, and I can kind of show you a few things about that.
Sounds good.
Show you what I do for a setup for a trellis. You've got to use a little imagination down here. I could probably fit 2 bales, possibly 3 if they're not very big, right in between these 2 fence posts. And these fence posts are probably about 6 feet tall, and they go down into the ground pretty well. 6 to 8 feet for a post is pretty good. You don't want to get so tall that you can't reach anything, so keep that in mind. And to connect the 2 posts, I have this really high quality piece of wood here. It was just a scrap. You really only need like a 2x4 If you're going to span a distance that's more than 12 feet, you probably want to have a 2x6 that connects them. And then the reason that I have the trellis is threefold. I like it for when I have vining vegetables like cucumbers or plants that are indeterminate, like some kinds of tomatoes are. This gives them a structure to grow upon so that they're not flopped all over on the ground. And the structure with the trellis that I use is this galvanized wire. And this is 14 gauge, which seems pretty heavy, but when you get those really big plants with those nice juicy vegetables on there, that's weight. So
Yeah.
you want to have something that's pretty sturdy. And I do them about every 10 inches. And again, you know, the bales have come up to about here, so it's probably a little more than 10 inches. I could probably put another one in there, but I'm not gonna. So this gives you your structure for plants to grow on. And then the other thing that the trellis system can do for you is, you know what it's like living in upstate New York, you can get a freeze unexpectedly. So you can actually take plastic and go right over your trellis and then tuck it in underneath your bales or into the twine that holds your bales together. Nice. And that'll protect what you've got growing on a temporary basis. You want to probably try to use a few little clothespins here and there on the ends.
Like a mini greenhouse.
Like a mini greenhouse. So if you're starting seeds under there, you can do that with the mini greenhouse. If you got an unexpected frost, or you know it's the end of the season, and you want a little bit more greens out of it. So it's a really good system. Now this stuff, which is going to be really fun to try to work with on a windy day, is row cover. And I'm just going to let it fly here. But the thing I'd like you to see about it, which I can kind of see, is do you see it? Do you see me through it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like a cloth.
Yeah, it's a polyester cloth, I believe. Yeah, and it's pretty thin. It comes in a lot of different thicknesses, but I got a very, very light one. And the reason I really like this stuff is it lets a lot of light get underneath it. You can see a little bit there on the ground. It's not like super shady. And it also is structured so that rain can go through it. And this is a lifesaver if you have insects that fly around and want to eat your straw bales. You're not going to get those pesky insects from the ground that are going to come up and mess up your crops and eat the roots, but you will have stuff land on your kale, like I did last year, and eat it. So if you can use the trellis to use the row cover over top of it, you imagine there's all this beautiful kale growing out of my things. And yeah, take that around this way. Around that way. Oops, maybe not.
Wrong way.
This is like the folding sheets in my
Yeah,
house.
exactly.
Never works the first time. So you can get that over top of one of the wires,
Sure, and just kind of.
and then just maybe tie it on the side. And if you had your bales here, the little string that goes around the bales, you can tuck that right in there. And your plants can still get the sun and the water that they need, but bugs can't get in there and ruin your day.
Where did you buy this kind of material?
This stuff you can probably buy in a pretty good garden store, but I bought that from Pine Tree Gardens, which is where I buy all my seeds. They're sort of the sister company to Johnny's seed company, and the thing I like about them is you can buy smaller quantities of stuff, and this you can actually buy by, I think, the foot, and they'll send it to you. Again, I went big. I overbought, but I have a lot of bales, so it's a really handy item. And it can be reused over the years. I've washed it before. It gets a little gorfed up, but it's not a bad product. So that's one thing I do with the trellis, besides the plastic and the growing stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. I felt like I couldn't properly plant things, so I would get down on the ground and grab the baling twine and try to tighten it up a little bit, and it was sort of like a losing battle after a while. I just kind of resigned myself to having a funky looking garden that year, and it was fine. But anyway, so you might get a little shrinkage as well as the smell and the mushrooms. And then the final thing that you will get is heat, because remember, you're decomposting this, and if you're someone who's kept a composting pile, you know that your composting pile gets kind of hot. Same thing with these guys. You'll feel some heat off of here. Now, that heat will work for you. If you are going to be doing seeds in your straw bales, which I primarily do, It's like making a little mini greenhouse. So some people spend money on those heating pads to get seeds to start in their house. You've got that right here. So we could probably just talk about planting at this point. So since we're talking about the heat. So if I was going to plant with just seeds, I don't want to just sprinkle the seeds in there because they'll just fall in all the holes and go all over the place. What I'd like to do is use some kind of potting soil. They say to use sterile potting medium, and I don't know what that is. So I just buy what I have available. I get these big bales of stuff to make pots of plants elsewhere.
That's a seriously large bale.
Yeah, I got these from Pines. They're a little pricey too, but you know, if you're someone who does a lot of planting, they're economical. And again, if you're somebody that's doing bales and your neighbor's doing bales and your other neighbor is, you can share them. So the book that I used, which the library has, by the way, and I used to have, I lent it to somebody, I can't find it. It's called Straw Bale Gardening Complete. And it's by a gentleman named Joel Karsten, who you can find him online. He's sort of the guru I learned this from. He recommends 1 to 2 inches of potting soil. I'm a little too cheap. So I just kind of go until it's covered up a bit. And I like using my hands because it's like getting dirty sometimes. And that's nowhere near 2 inches, but it's just fine.
It's pretty much you're covering the top of it.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to leave this part blank because I want to show you how to actually plant a plant. Not that I have a plant to show you, but I can show you what you would do for that. But yeah, I would cover this up. I would have my soaker hose down in there already if I was going to use that. And if I'm not using a soaker hose, that's fine. I find that it helps if you are planting seeds to moisten this a little bit first, because it can get a little flyaway. It just sort of kind of pats it down some. And I forgot to bring a pack of seeds out, but we'll do pretend seeds.
Yes, that's okay. Can you do like half a bale seeds and then half a bale plants?
Oh, totally. Like, yeah, in fact, when I do my tomatoes and my basil, because the basil needs, you know, some light to germinate and everything, I'll do like a row of bales with like maybe 1 tomato plant per bale, and then in between and underneath I have a bunch of basil that I start from seed. So I would go ahead and place my seeds space-wise according to whatever the package says, because every seed's different, and then I would cover them with however much it recommends, usually 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch, depending on the seed side. Pat everything down. And then if I have a hose, I'll use a really light misty kind of spray so that it doesn't like wash off. If you just have a watering can, just take it easy. And you want everything patted down nicely and watered. And that heat that's down in here can come up and get these guys germinating for you. If you happen to have those plastic seed starting trays, you know, those ones with the clear covers, you can even put that on top up there, get a little extra heat. But I find using maybe the plastic or just letting it sit out like this is fine. So that's really how you do the seeds. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so then also, if you're doing plants, and this will be a little hard to show you here just because this isn't a decomposted straw bale, but what you would do is just use your trowel, and again, that's pretty much the only tool you'll need, and you want to try to kind of make a space for your plant. And because you've been conditioning this for a couple of weeks, you'll be able to kind of get your hand in there pretty good. You want to make a hole that's about the size of your plant. So let's pretend this is my plant, and I'm going to, you know, get this open, get it down in there, and then I'm going to use some more of this planting medium. And what I'm doing with it is I'm kind of healing it in, which is kind of a way to just protect the roots of the plant to make sure that they're covered, because if they dry out, that can kind of compromise your plant. More bloopers. Thank you. I have hat hair. Gotta keep that on. So, anyway, that's pretty much how you would do a plant, and I would again water it. It works pretty well. I have a bale back here from last year that was composted, and I'm going to use this bale again. But you can see because it's already been composted.
Oh my gosh, yeah, look how the difference.
Yeah, you can really get in there.
Are you going to take that completely out and put the plant in, or just move it and make a hole?
You know, I would probably at this point just take out a little bit, put it in there, and then just fill it back in with the same stuff, since this is kind of composted anyway.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So after you get everything in there, you wait till your seeds germinate and do their thing. And once they turn into plants, you still want to feed them occasionally according to whatever fertilizing process you do. Some people use like a seaweed fertilizer or whatever. And then after that, you know, things will grow and you'll harvest them and enjoy them. And then something to consider is if you're these are some bales that I have left over from last year, and they're in pretty decent shape. You know, I can stick my hand into them quite far because they have decomposed quite a lot, but they have enough structure, I'll use them again. And one of the tools that I use as a time saver is the soaker hose system. I did mention before, I don't really want to go into all the ins and outs about how to design a soaker hose system, but you can go online and find a lot of good advice. But this is sort of like a porous plastic hose that I would place on top of the bales, and as I'm doing that, I can even take a trowel and make like a little channel for them.
Stick it right in there.
And stick it right in there. And I have all these pieces of rusty bent wire around that I use as staples to get it to stick to the bales. And I would do that all the way up, and then you know, I can just turn my water on and let it water, and it'll eventually will soak. When I designed the system, I should have probably designed it so I had two hoses going down, because occasionally the sides of the bales don't get enough water, but it seems to work okay. So it's good for deep soaking. But they're not very expensive. You can find kits at like Lowe's or Home Depot, and also if you need extra fittings online, you can find those as well. But that's something that you can work on while you're fertilizing your bales and getting them ready to plant. Because you don't want to try to put this in once you have a bunch of stuff planted in here, because you'll muck it up.
These old bales, bales you had from last year, do you have to go through the whole fertilizing process again this year when you get ready?
I probably do a little shake here and there, but I'll probably concentrate more on my new bales because I think they're in pretty decent shape. This dirt that you see on top is not actually the bales themselves. This is some potting soil that I use for doing seeds. And I'll show you that in the next step, because we covered placing the bales, fertilizing the bales, and pruning the bales. So the fun part, planting, comes next. Okay. This is a bed that's brand new last year, and it's predominantly filled with straw bales from the year before, and a little bit of soil. And this is some sorrel that I planted a couple of years, well, last year, and I forgot about, but it's been hiding underneath the straw bales from last year. So this will be nice, probably in about a month or so, it'll be really ready to pick. But what I wanted to show you with this bed is it's had old straw bales in it, and it looks kind of like not much right now, but you dig down, you can see,
Oh my gosh,
what's happened with the straw. It decomposes, it turns into this beautiful black, kind of cold stuff right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're building up your soil after you decompose your bales. So, again, it's not just about the growing season, it's about what you can do with the stuff that you use during the growing season to make next year even better. So I really highly encourage you to think about using straw bale gardens as a way to build up your garden.
So thank you. This was our first installment of an online workshop. We will have another one about worms coming up next. Check out the Indian Lake Public Library's website and Adirondack Lakes Center for the Arts website. We'll have copies of everything Susan talked about posted online, so you can download them at your convenience. Thanks so much. Have a great day.